you for coming, and I'm sure we're all interested to learn more about them and their literary work. So thanks so much, dear. When you open a book, you open your mind. So.
You're so clever. You have all these questions. You need to write a book.
Indeed. Nick? Oh no, I'm sorry.
Thank you. I thought you were the.
Hutch, go ahead.
There you go.
Can you hear me without this thing? Probably could. Well, you want to record it, right?
We are.
Well, I started writing about 20 years ago. In 2020, I started writing in 2000 when I had a heart attack. And my daughters found my diary, World War II diary, and so that was my first book. And you don't want to leave without reading my letter from the Queen, because I sent her, Queen of England, a copy of it, just an alter ego, you know.
That's all.
You know, and so from then on, I've just been writing short stories. As an old school teacher, I know that young kids and men will not read a book as quickly as they will read short stories. So I simply write short stories about my life and various topics, but mostly World War II. When we started interviewing veterans locally, the high school had a program where we interviewed veterans, and I got 50 to 60 of their stories. And I just kept going, and families started giving me stories from their family. So I've probably recorded 240 some World War II stories by the guys who did it. I simply edit them. Of course, my own book, I put my stories in every book just for good luck, you know. But my goal is to keep World War II alive. And then I branched out into the greater generation, because this generation is three generations removed from me. And they know nothing about the sacrifices that the men and women of that time made. And not just the men, but the women also, because they had to stay home and take care of their kids, work, take care of the family, go to work in defense plants, and pray that their loved one came home again. So World War II was so massive that people today have no idea what we were going to go through in World War III. Of course, being the bearer of bad news, I think World War III is coming one of these days. But that's my story. In the greatest generation, I write about growing up, going to old schools, the way schools used to be. Teachers used to teach for $800 a year, and township schools and Bedford schools. We had 13 high school teams, etc. 13 high schools. We outgrew it to expenses, and so it became, the state made us consolidate. But that's my story, just telling history as I have experienced it. I like to stick in my opinions on stuff. I do it much too often, of course. But they did a toast on me at Rotary. I didn't get a chance to talk. So I'll save that talk for the Legion, and we're going to do a program maybe again. We'll do another, this will be a half toast or something, or milk toast, I don't know. But that's the thing I do. I created this character. This cap on my head is my advertisement. And I created this character from World War II. And that's who I am. And everything I do is related to my generation, trying to educate your generation. It seems like I can't quit teaching. And so history is my thing. And 6 war books and 2 fun books about the greatest generation. And I always tell people that for $20, you can get a book and get educated, or you can get a Big Mac platter and get fat. I fastened in there.
Big Mac platter.
I'm your grandfather.
Thanks for that. That was great. Hi, everybody. My name is Nick Webb. I only have one book so far. I'm just kind of getting started. Very much a hobby for me right now. Very impressed by this room, for one thing. There were several of these people I didn't know, I hadn't met, but to see the work that everybody's doing, the time. I know any of you that are in the audience that do take the time to write anything down or put forth an effort like that, you know how much time it takes. When I was writing my book is fiction, it's 10 short stories. When I wrote it over the several years it took me to do it, I really thought I had this gigantic work. And then you format it, and then you see the first thing, and you realize that it's maybe the thinnest thing that you've ever seen. So there's a lot, with each page, there's a lot of work, there's a lot of time that goes into it, but I don't think anybody that's up here would do this unless they really enjoyed it. I don't think Lee would put, as much as he wants to tell the stories and keep that alive, I think he loves it. And I think that's why you see him and you see him out and things like that. And I feel the same way. I've been writing short stories since I was 3rd or 4th grade. We had to fill out a questionnaire, and one of the questions was, who was your favorite teacher of all time? And I wrote Larry Saliba. He was my 4th grade teacher, and I partially put that because he was the first person that let me read my stories in front of people. I'm not a particularly bashful person. I can handle criticism fairly well, but as a 10-year-old standing in front of your classmates right before lunch, you're the only thing between them and recess, essentially, right? And you're gonna read a story that you wrote, and they don't care. Like, they do not even a little bit, but it was really, really important to me to read it out loud to them. So I developed this way of writing and reading and telling stories, and I consider myself to be much more of a storyteller more so than a writer. I do love the written word, and I think it's important for people to read books. A Kindle, sure, if you want to read a Kindle, that's fine. My wife loves Kindles. I'm 42, and I'm right on that cusp where I kind of still want to hold it, right? Like, I still want to have the real book. But I love telling stories, and the stories that I wrote in my book here are set in a fictional southern Indiana town. It's the only way they're connected is they take place in the years that we had the big outbreaks of cicadas. So they're in 1987, 2004, and 2021. Other than that, they're not connected, other than they take place in the same town. There's a wide variety of topics, nothing too heavy, right? Try to keep it too light. The world's kind of scary. I don't want to. You can kind of read this and relax for an hour or so and get through it. My wife asked me because she was my first reader, and she's a elementary school principal. She's pretty direct. And I knew she would give me honest feedback. I mean, she definitely loves me. She's a patient woman, but she will tell me what she thinks about these stories, and her support, her encouragement was overwhelming, because you don't really know if you've got anything when you're sitting alone, scribbling on a pad or typing on your laptop or whatever, however you do it. You don't really know if you have anything until somebody else sees it, and that in itself was enough for me to continue to work and develop and put the time in to do it. She did ask, why do all the couples in your stories seem to be right on the edge of divorce? I don't know. I stressed that it was fiction, right? Like it's not autobiographical. But I will admit I hadn't noticed that until she said it. So I love to tell stories, and I love to write, and I think that it's awesome that everybody showed up today. So thanks for coming.
Hi. Am I too loud? Okay. I'm Pam Horner, and I'm kind of late to the game. I didn't get started until about maybe 9 or 10 years ago, but I had always written. Like you were saying, even as a young child, I was constantly writing things. I just didn't think they would ever go anywhere. But when my grandson was diagnosed with dyslexia and was having all kinds of failing and all kinds of trouble in school, I thought, I wonder if I could do something with that. So I just wrote a story where this dyslexic kiddo who's having trouble in school is actually kind of yanked up so he won't feel sorry for himself and whisked back into time so he can start using his cleverness like dyslexics have to do and think outside of the box and be, be more. And he helps George Rogers Clark take the 3 4s. And so that's how it got started, and it just sort of went from there because I just loved it. Now, everything I do is super janky and homemade. I mean, it was awful. My first book event, I didn't have the books, but I still showed up, and I don't know why I thought that was a good idea. I had 2 picture frames with, here's what my covers will look like when I get my books, and there I was, Buy my books, they'll be coming one of these days. So that's how I got started, and I have never looked back. And my books came in, so it turned out okay. But in my experience, it is your experience. That's what I do. I write from experience. It was because I had watched my grandson struggle, and I loved history, so I wanted to make sure that I used a lot of historical fiction. I like to tell stories, so my second book was a fairy tale characters, and I put them in a support group because they hate Disney, and so they can only tell their real stories. So my second book is that. So it's just, to me, it's just the things that you like to do or the things that you're going through. My third book, I wrote it because I watched my mother, my role model, my best friend, my person, one of the smartest people, and she had Alzheimer's. It just hit just like that. So I wrote about that because I wanted to help people who are going through that or have ever lost anyone or if you're a caretaker, and also to honor her. So again, if you have things going on in your life, write them down, because to me it's the best way of honoring yourself and honoring the people in your lives. And I just love it. I don't think I'll ever stop. It's that gratifying. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lori Roberts, and I'm kind of like Pam. I got into writing late in the game. I was in my late 40s, and I was getting ready to have grandbabies that were coming, and I thought, I really want something to leave them in case something would happen to me and they would never know me. So I sat down, because I love history, and I love the era of the Civil War. I sat down and wrote my first book in about 4.5 months. And then, of course, it takes a little bit longer by the time you get it published and all that. But I thought, I can do this. This is something that's interesting to me, and Lost Letters kind of fueled that passion. And I write a lot about family, so my children, grandchildren, ancestors, they show up in these books that I've written, their names. And so that's kind of where I got started. I wanted to leave a legacy or something that my grandchildren would have. And once that was published, I thought, wow, I can do this. And I wrote another. And so, and as soon as that book was done, I thought, okay, I can write another. But all of them, the historical fiction, the paranormal, suspense, true crime, those all are just things that interest me. And they say, write what you know. And so I knew history, but I didn't know enough that I felt like I could be the authority. So I had to put boots on the ground and go places that I was going to write about. And I enjoyed that, because part of writing the book is the research. And so my husband, I drug him along with me, and pardon me, we went on a lot of little trips to do the research. So the last book, I have to say, that I wrote, which was about Sarah Schaefer, Sing a Song of Murder, that was probably the hardest book, because the story was already out there, and I decided to make it fiction. But I wanted to stay with the story. And that, to me, when I started writing, was during the pandemic, and everyone was holed up in their home, and you couldn't go anywhere. So for the first time, I couldn't go out and research like normal. And as soon as January hit, and the restrictions were lifted and we could get out, the first place I went was upstairs. And I mean, poor Joyce, I think I just was like a stalker, you know. I'd be knocking on her door and saying, hey, do you have, and she of course had it, and would bring all this research out. And it's hard telling, I probably spent a small fortune in copies. And then this lady down here is going to talk about the way I could have saved a lot of money. But anyway, so, and that's kind of my story. I enjoy history. I write books that I wouldn't be ashamed to have in a church library, you know, in the school libraries, where people could, to get my books and read and enjoy. So thank you for coming today. We appreciate it.
I'm Deborah Creighton, and I started writing my first book about 14 years ago. True to what everybody else has said, I had a son who was going through a terrible breakup, and I was very angry at the girl he was breaking up with, and I thought, I can make this into a romance novel. That's what I can do. And so I took all my anxieties and anger out on this poor girl in my book. And so, yes, that's exactly what you do. You take life experiences and you turn them into the written word. I've been writing since I was a little girl. I still have stories that my mother kept from when I was in 1st and 2nd grade. I have kept a journal since I was in the 7th grade. I have written something down every single night since 7th grade. So I've constantly been writing. So my first book took me 14 years because in the meanwhile I was doing things like delivering babies and working in emergency rooms and taking care of patients. So I got delayed in finishing it, but once I retired, it was on my bucket list and it got done. And then, like you say, the second one was much easier, and I've already started working on the third one. Anybody see a pattern there? I have 3 sons. There are 3 books. But it's interesting, none of them have read the books, and they don't want to read the books. And people who read them, who know all 3 of my boys, do not recognize those boys. When I say, oh, the first one's such and such son, they'll say, oh, yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. So
I recognize the ex-girlfriend.
Yeah, you did. She was, yeah. Anyway.
You're still there.
Yeah, it's still there.
So anyway, so yeah, you take what you know and you use it and you make it your own and you write about it and hopefully people like reading it. And so retirement has been good to me because I've been able to finish 2 books and hopefully the third one will come along soon. So.
Hi, I'm Becky Boer. I've been listening and thinking, I think my first published thing was in probably 3rd grade. I wrote some kind of crazy editorial about stray dogs in Bedford, and somehow it ended up in the Times Mail. I don't know how I did it, but I hadn't thought about it in years till he was saying that. I don't consider myself a writer. I work with history. I have Reba Butler who helps do the research, and we've together created 2 books, a couple of diaries that you will learn about Bedford in 1910, and it was when a teenager was keeping track of what was going on. That was fun to read. There's another little diary that high school student at Springville wrote, and that was fun to do because it was of the time period that I remember these people that she talks about. And she was always talking about somebody called on the phone. What I really discovered was that she was listening to Party Line, so she listened to everybody's phone calls and she wrote them down. So that was fun too. The most interesting books we've created here at the museum are the Sarah Schaefer book, which includes the prosecutor at the time kept a diary, or kept a scrapbook, and in it includes actual crime scene photos, which I had never seen before. That was fun. There was the assistant prosecutor. He wrote a crazy scrapbook kind of thing about his theory of the murder, and it gets really wild. And then we put together all pictures that we could find about Bedford at the time, and every person who was accused, and lots of pictures and stories about people are in here. So that's fun. And then this one is it was about a Civil War soldier, a person who lived in Bedford, got sent out to the Civil War. He was he wrote to his girlfriend who lived in Bedford, and her name was Rogers. And he was an excellent writer. He eventually ended up being a newspaper reporter and he owned papers, so he's always a good writer. But you can go through the whole Western front of the Civil War and read what he has to say, and it's fascinating. So mostly I just compile books and don't do a lot of writing. I did do the museum corner stories for a while. That was fun to do little short stories. That's me.